Alright guys, we are back. If you notice some changes, it's because we are tidying up the wiring. What we've done is we've taken some zip ties, just small whatevers, and I've grouped these into three categories. You don't have to group it this way, but visually I wanted to present this. These are hot end wires, and this is the fan extension, or D9 for the laser or whatnot. So these will go into the screw terminals, and so will the heated bed into the D8. So I've got these grouped, and the next thing I've got grouped is limit switches and thermistor. So I know that the blue and green is your Y, the red and black is your X up top, and then the hot end thermistor has two extra ports available, white wires, that's the hot end Z. So this is all kind of grouped so I can visually remember what goes where. You also, it's probably a good idea to label, find out which wires are which, and label them X, Y, Z, and E for your motor wires. So your X is up top, this one's your E for extruder, your Z lead screw, Y for your belt table. Table belt. So my plan is to take all these, we're going to kind of bundle them up, and we're going to first attach them to the ramps board. I'll show you where they all go, and then we're going to kind of align them down in this open area. This is specifically open so that a lot of cabling can go down behind it, and it also kind of gets stuff out of the way. I know this is pretty tight, but you know, if once you get it in there, it's actually not too bad as long as you keep stuff down and out of the way. So let's go ahead and start. By the way, this is also your terminal screws. I may have mentioned that in the 4 video. So this guy, we're gonna go ahead and start with the terminal screws. This guy, red, going that way, goes right here into these pins. So we got red. I prefer to take these wires and tuck them down with the screwdriver, something small, and they can usually be tucked down out of the way underneath this fuse right here, the yellow fuse, and then they can be ran to the terminal blocks here and here. So I just kind of get it started by doing that. The next thing, we're going to do the motor wires last. We're going to start with the hot end because it's way over here. Let's get this guy in. You want to loosen up all the screw terminals. You may need some pliers to get these in place. Just do them one at a time. It can be kind of tough. Tighten them. Your hot end, which we're doing first, goes in the very outside set of terminal screws. I would call the back of the ramps board, the front, the left, the right, LCD screen over there, power and all that. Left. Your next step, you can go ahead and take this fan wire, and I would say run this constant, at least to get started. Later on we can attach it to the D9 if you want to do a laser or you want to control this independently. But for right now, just start with a constant wired. And so we're going to tie the black and green. We're just twisting those wires together. These wires probably are not soldered. That is intentional. Those wires may also have to be stripped. Some of them were not stripped on the fan extension, the blue and green. Quick little wire stripping and they're done. Okay, so now we've got those hooked up. Let's go ahead and also, since we're right here, let's hook up your heated bed. The heated bed, I think it might be specific, so you're going to have ground on the outside and then positive coming in, ground positive, ground positive. It inverts ground positive on the power. So hook these into the terminals. Again, probably have to use needle nose pliers to get those wires in. Maybe. Could be a little tricky. Trickiest part is making sure that the screw terminals, there's room, and you're actually getting them in the right little spot. They go in pretty low on the terminal. Pretty low. Underneath the little metal plate that springs down below the screw. A bit of a trick. Alright, here's the second one. Fortunately, I have to do this once. It's not quite all the way out of the way. If you notice that a screw has been backed out, but there's just not a lot of room, you may have to take a small paper clip. Or bulldog clip. These are bulldog binder clips, whatever you want to call them. And that little wire that's under there, you can typically just kind of shove that in there and get it opened up. You can of course do this before you install the ramps, but generally it's pretty easy. This one's just giving me a little bit of a fit. There it goes. It's like the biggest opening in the world, and I just couldn't seem to get the wire to run straight. Kept catching the edge. Alright, so we got both of those guys in there after much ado about wiring. Alright, so if you have the upgrade kit, go ahead and throw on the heated bed wires. Of course, wire up your fan, hot end. So this side is done. Your next step is going to be to add your limit switches. Now, the Y limit, typically I have these running down inside here, but I'm probably going to switch to this method, and we're going to build a case to hide all this stuff in up front that also holds the LCD screen. So all this is going to be nice and cleaned up down the road. I'll probably have something available for download and print at a later date. Okay, so this is your limit switches. Your limit switch, your proximity sensor, has a brown wire that goes to the 12 volt constant, which goes to this terminal. So we're going to start with that. Keep your motor wires out of the way. 12 volt constant just ties in here. And then you also have an X, a Y, and a thermistor. A thermistor for the heated bed. Now, the thermistor for the heated bed is also going to hold the hot end is also going to hold the heated bed thermistor wires. So those will be inserted at this point. You should just kind of click in. You have to make sure they're rotated properly. There is a kind of a flat side, that's the back. And then if you roll it over, you can see where the crimping is done. That's the top that goes towards these little retainer clips. So you should be able to tug. They should be okay. You don't want to tug them too hard. All those should be in. This is your thermistor, and it goes on the 6 pins. right here. The far left 4. The right 2 aren't used. That would be for the extruder, a second extruder. Okay. Wiring can get a little bit crazy, so try to remember to keep it from tangling up between itself. This is the X limit, the X minimum, and then there is a X maximum column, and then you're going to go back to the Y minimum. So you're going to skip one layer. Hopefully you guys can see that. These rows, the wires are going to hit the front 2 pins. The back pin is not used. And so the first column here is the X minimum. The next one's X max, then Y minimum, Y maximum, Z minimum is the next one, and that would be for your probe, your Z probe, because you're checking the minimum distance that you can travel. And that's going to skip another spot and go in right there. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that, evenly spaced apart from each other. The furthest pin that way of the 3 is going to be your signal, and then a ground. So the green one will be ground, and that's specific on the proximity sensor. And then the farthest one is going to be a power supply, like a 5-volt supply. So make sure that you're not using the 5-volt supply. The switches are going on the signal pin and the ground pin. Alright, so that is that small little group of harness. The last item is going to be 4. Next item is going to be your motors, X, Y, and Z. These, pretty simple. Red wire always goes left. This is extruder, this is X, this is Y, this is Z. There are 4 little pins. As long as the red's on the left, you're good to go. So that was X. This is Y. This is Z. Oops. Get a little crazy with my wiring here. Z has 2 sets available for 2 vertical columns. A lot of printers have 2 uprights, 2 motors, so you can plug it in either or. It does not matter. And then the final one is the extruder. This is E1 or E0. I'm not 100% sure. It depends what the software is calling it. Anyways, that's your extruder 1. Again, red on the left. That is all the wiring. So it's kind of like looking at it and going, holy crap. Oop, these came apart. Green and black came apart. So how do we get all these wires in a tidy fashion? Well, I'll put it this way. The trickiest part is going to be getting all this controlled. So we're going to tighten all of it back into this rail and have the rest of it come out here. And then we got from here to here to deal with. We don't have to worry about anything on top of the board. So we got to set our terminals in place. Choose a side for the ground and one for the power. Loosen up your terminal supplies. I put these between the washer and the plastic. If you do it that way, the washer won't rotate with the bolt, it'll just compress. That way your wires don't get twisted around in a circle. Alright, slide it in behind the washer, tighten the bolt. Check. Take a small screwdriver, flathead. I would start with hot end wires. Push those down into that slot behind the ramps board. Just kind of shove them down there. I need a wider screwdriver. Next, I would put the proximity sensor in place. Shove that down. If you guys can see kind of what I'm doing. Proximity sensor. goes down. Next is, I don't know, we got a fan extension. Get as many of them as you can. Your thermistor wire is going to go back behind and then come back up forward and meet up with your hot end power. So hopefully all these are held down pretty good. And then you're going to take, the limit switches are pretty much where they need to be. Those you don't really have to worry a whole lot about. They pretty much run away immediately. All of the motor wires are a little bit of a trick. Got to kind of pull them backwards towards this back corner. And then once you kind of got them in about the right place, you want to make sure none of the wires go into the pegs here of the LCD controller, because you won't be able to put the LCD screen in. Alright, I've already got a bolt in place. At this point you can put a bolt in place right here. But you want to basically grip all those wires, get them nice and as flat as possible. Try to dodge any of the black connectors. It can be a little bit of a trick, but if you get everything down nice and flat in that back corner, make sure nothing's on top of the black plastic of the ramps holder, because that's going to sandwich up to this 90-degree brace. So with your T-nut in place, drop that first bolt in to that T-nut. Okay. Just double check your wires, make sure they're still kind of running the way you need them to, somewhat clean. Make sure this is loose enough that you can position this T-nut, the top one, up high. You should be able to find the hole for it, kind of get it about in place. This heatsink should kind of line up with each wheel. Make sure you have an opening to that T-nut down there. You may have to stick a screwdriver and kind of pull it and center it in place. Hopefully you have a magnetic bit holder. That really makes a difference here, because you can drop this into that hole. You do want to watch out for pinching any wires. You don't want any wires below. There we go. Yeah, you may have to kind of just lift a few of the wires up until you hit that hole without pinching anything. Should be able to just tighten it, push those wires back down. Make sure it's flush here when you finally tighten it. Same with this side. Feel your thumb, tighten it. That is it. It's a little bit of a task, but you know, take your time, make sure you route them. If you'll notice, all of them are like all coming out right there. It's quite a bit of wiring pressing through this little corner. We may design an extension here to pull the whole ramps further out, giving a lot more room back there. It's probably what we're going to do in the future, along with hiding all the wires up front so you don't have to route everything tight back there. One more thing I want to show you is the LCD screen. The LCD screen is pretty simple. There's not much to it. To get it in place, if your wires are carefully routed, make sure you guys can see it. Yeah. Okay. Pull this guy off here just to give a clearer picture. Okay. As long as none of the pins there are having issues, you don't have any wires between pins, you should be able to take this guy, set them on the pins, and rock them down on top. You still have this huge mess. That's not much to deal with. Pull these ribbons. By the way, the ribbon should face outward off of this. It should be running that way, because all these wires can then be pressed down behind the LCD board and pushed downward. These ribbons then come over the top and slide downward. Kind of hold them from lifting up and getting in contact with the belt, because your Y belt is going to run right through here. So then you still have a bit of a mess of wire under here, but this is totally manageable down here. Even if you just take a ribbon or a zip tie and you just grab a big bundle and just zip it together, we'll eventually have some kind of a mount that deals with all of this just like that. With a nice clean presentation. Then you have your heated bed, which this is the loom for the heated bed, the really small stuff. If you got the upgrade kit, I would start, I don't know, somewhere around here. A cool thing you can do with this loom is you can actually like just twist it on. As long as the wires are nice and straight, you don't have too many interruptions. You just kind of twist the loom. Once you get a certain length, though, you have too much resistance built up, and it's kind of a pain to twist on. All right. Getting pretty close, guys. This was a 2.5, 3 hour build, probably. We still got a little bit of testing to do, and I'm also going to show a quick final assembly here in a minute on this same video. But then I'll go over calibration in the next video. Calibration of like your first print, setting up the surface, making sure your XYZ and checking your Z probe is consistent, accurate, all that. Okay, so that's how this should look over here. You may want to like zip tie these together, do some strain relief perhaps. You do not want these wires catching inside, like on top of these right here. Don't want the wires catching those. But how it will be put into it, you pull off just the one. It has to come in from the front, because you can't come in from the back. You have to come in from the front. Slide this side in. Oh, no, you don't do it that way. You do it this way. Put the belt in along the edge of the 2020. Slide that side in, wrap the belt around, right? The belt should then go back in between, and you should mostly be able to just pull the belt through is what I'm doing to get it to feed. Keep that belt held forward. If this is in camera view or not, but then you would simply slide that flat T-nut in place, hand tight, maybe tighter if you're doing, once you get everything all set up. This guy here just drops down. I've done stuff where I've wrapped this behind this. It works pretty well, I think, depending on the size of the print. It is. And there it is, guys. That is the 3D printer Reach final assembly. I can even power it up real quick and just do a quick test. I have not even tested anything on here, so I have no idea if this is totally gonna bomb or if it's gonna work. Will be a good test. Oh, its cord's almost long enough. What do you think? I think it's long enough. Alright, we're going to flip this around. It'll look upside down, but I think it's just long enough to power. Oop, we got LCD screen operational, so that's good. Yeah, this will definitely have to be heated bed. Will definitely, the cables have to be pulled up and tightened in position. You can do that with zip ties. You know, there's a few different methods. I'll just do a really quick and dirty solution here, and that involves, I don't recommend doing it this way, but for the very few seconds that I'm finishing this, I'll do it. That way they're not catching in the wheel or anything, the wires underneath. Maybe some Kapton tape. So there it is. We can do an auto home or something and just see what happens. Oh. The screw needs to be extended outward. It was basically running into nothingness. Okay, and the Z probe has to be dropped down further. Z probe works. Well, it homed. Just my limit switches and whatnot are not in the right position. So that is for the next step. At least we have an operational printer that quickly homed immediately after I finished the build. So good stuff, guys. All right, next up we will tune this machine and get it precisioned up. Thanks, guys.